Have the Florida Panthers taken a step back this year? Is Matthew Tkachuk living up to expectations? We'll have those answers and more on this crossover edition of Locked On Red Wings.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and the Locked On Detroit Red Wings podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers and Locked On Red Wings podcast your first listen of the day. For everyone on the Red Wings feed, let me introduce myself. My name is Armando Velez. You can follow me on Twitter at MonoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. And thankful to be doing another crossover with the two hosts of Locked On Detroit Red Wings, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. What's up, guys?
You know, we're ready to roll, man. The Wings have been the boys have been buzzing lately. I'm pumped. We always have really good like crossovers, and has it been a couple of months now, maybe?
Yeah, since the preseason.
Did we do one? Yeah, okay. So yeah, pumped to be back. Pumped for this matchup. We just had a really, really crazy, hectic victory over Tampa, and going into Florida right after that is probably a little bit of a tough task, but we'll see. I'm pumped.
Yeah, currently sitting third in the Atlantic Division on a tiebreaker because of that win over the Tampa Bay Lightning. So we're currently riding a high, and we're going to try and ride that high as long as possible, hopefully through tonight's game. As for us here at Locked On Red Wings, this will be our Thursday episode.
Yeah, Thursday episode for the Panthers feed as well. Of course, the Red Wings are on the third game of their four-game road trip. Wins over Columbus, win over Tampa Bay, where the Red Wings faced a lot of shots by Tampa Bay, and Ville Husso was incredible. And I want to start off with just the culture shift for the Detroit Red Wings. Of course, it was really tough with all the turnover that happened with Detroit. Of course, firing Jeff Blashill. Signing Dominic Kubalik, David Perron, Andrew Kopp, and Ville Husso. Of those guys who has been the biggest contributor as far as contributing to the team's success this year.
Well, you said it was really tough with all the turnover. It was actually pretty easy after the way that season ended last year.
That's why I was laughing. I was like, we were pumped about it, honestly.
We were really happy when it finally happened. Not anything against Jeff Blashill. I mean, as a human, we respect the heck out of him, and he was put in a tough situation. But it was well past time. But if you talk about, the biggest contributor, that's a really loaded question to ask because they've all contributed so well in so many different regards. But I think, we talk about it night in and night out, and you mentioned it, the Red Wings got an incredible game out of Ville Husso, and he continues to be the biggest acquisition, in my opinion, that the Red Wings could have had. They traded for him out of St. Louis for, I think, a third-round pick and signed him to an extension, much like they did with Nedeljkovic the year before. But so far, early in the season, while Nedeljkovic showed flashes of brilliance last year but was a little bit hot and cold, Husso's been nothing if not consistent for the bulk of the games he's played. He's had one or two bad games here, and one of which came on his sixth consecutive start, which he's not used to in his career. He has been absolutely phenomenal. And in that game last night against the Tampa Bay Lightning, he had a goal saved above expected of 3.53. He saved 44 shots on net in that game. And there's tons of contributors. We got to shout out Derek Lalonde too, Scotty, because this is his system that he's running. And so nothing works. It doesn't work without him. But number one is Ville Husso. He's the main reason why you're winning these games. You don't win that game last night. You don't win that game against the Predators 2 weeks ago if it weren't for Ville Husso being Ville Husso.
Yeah, Husso is definitely the slam dunk number one answer there. And I think, honestly, there's a really clear number two as well. And Dominic Kubalik has been not only comfortably the best value-wise, the best signing the Red Wings have made, but I would argue he's been one of the best value signings in the entire NHL up to this point in the season. He is producing at an unreal clip, and got off to an incredible start when it comes to like goals, just putting the puck in the back of the net. His style of play fits exactly what this team needed. So many times last season, we were just screaming at the TV, like, someone please shoot the puck. And Dominic Kubalik gets off like 5 to 7 a night, like with like on net a night.
Yes.
Like he is not afraid to grip it and rip it. And that's exactly what this team needed. And like I said, he's producing at an unreal clip. Until recently, he was at a point a game. He's still
is.
around. Yeah.
He's still at a point.
Still like, and yeah, he's been unbelievable, getting like top 6 minutes, getting first unit power play minutes. He has been an unreal infusion into this offense, and it has been exactly what this team needed. So I would say Husso is definitely not only the biggest acquisition, but probably the biggest sole reason why we find ourselves in the position that we're in the standings. And Kubalik is very much second as well.
Yeah, and I think if you want to give one to the defensive side too, I think Oli Mata has been the underrated signing of the offseason for the Detroit Red Wings. You sign him, he is a defensive defenseman. You know what you're going to get out of him. He had a huge offensive resurgence early in the season, but we knew that would taper off. It's kind of tapered off. He's getting secondary apples here and there. But really what makes his value so high is the way they deploy him. They put him on a pair with Phil Peronic, who is a pure offensive defenseman, and they have really leveled each other out, and they have become the best defense. And I'm not joking when I say this, because this is on a team with Mort Seider, reigning rookie of the year. Phil Peronic and Oli Mata are the best defensive pairing on the Detroit Red Wings right now, to the point where they're getting more ice time at the end of the game than Mort Seider and Ben Chiarot, because they've been so reliable. Phil Peronic doesn't have to be afraid to step up and make offensive plays because he knows Oli Mata's behind him. So they've really leveled each other out. And I think if you talk about the best acquisitions at each position, it's Ville Husso, Dominic Kubalik, and Oli Mata. But I mean, all the other acquisitions as well have finally started to kind of come together. Perron started off hot. Andrew Kopp's starting to come into his own. He had surgery in the offseason, so his first game was the first regular season game. It's taken him a while to get back into it after core surgery. Ben Chiarot he's probably the one we're iffiest on, because Ben Chiarot giveth and Ben Chiarot taketh away. But every single piece that they've acquired, even Austin Czarnik, who was a depth forward for the Detroit Red Wings, he was a guy that they signed to stay in Grand Rapids until injuries happened, has come up and scored goals for the Detroit Red Wings. So every single piece that they've acquired has paid dividends so far through the season. And that roster turnover is what has them sitting at 13-7-5 here, a little over a quarter of the way in.
Yeah, and you talk about being the giveth and taketh with Ben Chiarot. Of course, Florida Panthers fans dealt with a little bit of it for 20 plus games plus the playoffs. And then you talk about Oli Mata and Hronek, a stay-at-home defenseman versus an offensive defenseman, and then you have that. And then, of course, with all the point production that's coming with the Detroit Red Wings, 3 of the top 5 point getters from what I'm seeing are new acquisitions. So you don't have to rely too much on a Dylan Larkin. You don't have to rely too much on a Lucas Raymond and a Maury Sider as well. But now that the Detroit Red Wings are in a position where they're on a point pace of 100, which Brian tweeted out this morning. As far as I know we're a little bit away from the trade deadline, but the Red Wings have a lot of cap space coming up, and that they could even trade for someone who's under contract for quite a few years. Is there a player in mind, or maybe even like a Bo Horvat or something that they could possibly go after in the trade deadline?
I would say a lot of that, honestly, is still to be determined by where they sit in the standings at the trade deadline. I would say that that's definitely not set in stone at the time being. Like, Brian and I have been very open about the fact that early on and coming into the season, we expected this team to be like one of the best teams in the NHL to miss the playoffs, like right on the outside looking in. And if you get to the trade deadline, like if you pull up in February and like the All-Star break and post All-Star break and scoot into the trade deadline and you're still in a playoff spot, then I think what you do at the deadline is vastly different than if we start seeing the decline, somewhat soon and as the winter goes on. So I think, I don't know, not to like cop out of the answer, but I think it's still like too early to tell. And the only reason I say too early to tell is just because we are exceeding expectations so far. And that was like an unplanned for thing. So I think that'll, if we maintain this, it's probably a different answer than like if we revert back to, because we got off to a hot start last year and then fell off a cliff in the second half too. So
yeah, I actually had this conversation with my buddy Kenny, who works down the hall from me over at 97.1 today, because he was asking me the same thing. He goes, "At what point do we start thinking about being buyers?" And I told him, like, unless we're in like third place in the Atlantic Division, like not a wild card spot, because you know how when you get in that wild card territory, one or two bad losses can set you back huge. If you're in a divisional spot, then maybe we can start having the conversation. But I honestly, Scotty, I don't even see a future for the Detroit Red Wings where they go full buyer mode at this deadline. I think this core is still too young and it's still too raw to go full buyer mode. What you could see maybe is a mix. I mean, you have guys like Tyler Bertuzzi on expiring deals, and unfortunately, he's now suffered his second broken hand of the season, out for another 4 to 6 weeks. And his value because of that, not that that's the most important thing. Obviously, him returning healthy is most important, but his value because of that is going to take a huge hit unless he comes back from this injury and lights it up until the trade deadline. But, if you can't work out a deal with him, then you got to move him at the deadline, you would think. I don't want to see Tyler Bertuzzi dealt because I love what he brings to the team. I love his game, but with who you have to sign here in next couple years, you're gonna run out of cap space very quickly. And so I think you might see a mix. If they're in the playoff mix, I think you might see a mix of buying and selling at the same time. Think of what I'm trying to get at is think of what they did with Anthony Mantha. That's what I'm trying to get at, is in terms of what you might see. They traded Anthony Mantha away, but they got Jacob Vrana back. So it was a 1-for-1, trading our piece that's not performing for your piece that's not performing. Jacob Vrana has had his own issues off ice, and we hope he comes back whenever he's ready, and he's suffered injuries along the way. We haven't gotten to see a full season of him, but when he does play, he's electric. And so I imagine if we can ever get him for a full 82 season, he can be a major difference maker. So I'm thinking if you're going to do anything at the trade deadline, it's going to be something along those lines. Not a complete sell, but not a complete buy. Probably just looking to revamp the lineup like Steve Yzerman has been doing.
Mm-hmm. And Steve Yzerman not making any promises as far as where a team is going to be at a certain point, and doesn't seem to follow timelines. That's for sure. But
no, his own timeline.
Rebuild is over when it's over, is what he says.
Yeah. That's for sure. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where the guys are going to be asking me some Florida Panther related questions to prepare for this matchup on Thursday night. But first, we're going to tell you all about BetOnline. And BetOnline is your number one source for all your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football, basketball, soccer, esports. We got it all at BetOnline. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right, segment 2, crossover edition between the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and the Locked On Red Wings. Scotty, myself, and Armando are here, and we're going to talk about your Florida Panthers, Armando. And my number one question is, and we asked you about it during the preseason, and you said that you expected the Panthers to take a small step back this season, trading away Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar for a much younger Matthew Tkachuk. And my question is this exactly what you were expecting, sitting currently 5th in the Atlantic Division, not too far behind? Granted, you're only 3 points behind third place. It's not like you're that far behind, but has Matthew Tkachuk been all he was hyped up to be? And is this where you were expecting the Panthers to be at this point in the season?
I expected to be, as far as standings wise, I was expecting to be still in the top 3, but there's still plenty of time. And they haven't gone on a winning streak of 3 games yet this season. So it's just been, you see the Panthers win 2 games and then they're in the number 1 spot in the wild card, then lose a game or 2, and then they're right on the outside looking in, but they're still in that position to still make something happen, to still make a little bit of a run, that they're still going to be in the race towards the end of the season. But as far as Matthew Tkachuk, I mean, he's tied for 5th in the NHL in points with with 35. The only guys that he's behind are Nikita Kucherov, Jason Robertson, Connor McDavid, and Leon Draisaitl. And as far as goals per 60 in the NHL, he's in the top 3 as far as goals per 60. So everything that Matthew Tkachuk has just been so joyous to watch. I mean, sure, he is an agitator. That's what you're going to get from Matthew Tkachuk being in front of the net after the whistle. But it brings a little bit of a toughness factor for this team. And one of my favorite things of Matthew Tkachuk's game is like when he's behind the net and nobody knows what move he's going to make next. And also the difference between him and Huberdeau, of Huberdeau being more of a distributor and Matthew Tkachuk. I mean, there's been so many times in game situations where you need a goal and Matthew Tkachuk is right there in front of the net to tip something in. So he's always putting other players in great position as well. I mean, even though Sasha Barkov has been out for the last 6 games, which we have some news on Alexander Barkov with his father told the Finnish newspaper called IS or is I don't know how it definitely translates to English, but talking about how Barkov has had pneumonia for the last few weeks, missed the game, tried playing, felt sick against Washington, and then it didn't get better. So the coaching staff felt it wasn't right for him to go on the West Coast trip. But he's been skating a little bit, and he's expected to play on Thursday night against the Detroit Red Wings. So missed the entire road trip. They're coming off a exactly 500 road trip, 2-1 in Western Canada. But, you know, they're only 2 games under 500 on the road. And last season, even though this team's not the same as last season, they went almost a month and a half without winning a game on the road. So the fact that they're, you know, still treaded water a little bit after a few not so great games in Edmonton and Calgary, even though they could have gotten 2 points out of Edmonton. This Panthers team, when healthy, is still in very great position to make a run. And I mean, Anton Lundell, hopefully he's able to make his return to the Panthers lineup as well. Radko Gudas is still in concussion protocol as well. Patrick Hornqvist is on LTIR. Anthony Duclair has skated individually, but not in a team setting. So it's going to be a little while until he comes back. So it's the Panthers are up against the cap with $6.4 million of buyout money with Scott Darling and Keith Yandel. So they're doing what they can right now with what they got. And the fact that they're still challenging for a playoff spot, it's just about where I expected, but wish they could be, of course, a little higher in the standings. I was thinking like around 3rd around this time.
Sure. Well, I do want to try and, I don't know, as best as you can, I guess, just nail down like a specific reason as to why it's been such a different start to the year than the end of last season was. I mean, obviously last season was, a phenomenal year. And now, I mean, like Brian said, like so far it's, out of the playoff picture if the season ended today. But what would you attribute the biggest reason to that? I don't want to call it fall off yet, because again, there's still so much season left, but like the odds of them having 120 some odd points again are like looking pretty slim. Like what's the I guess just the biggest difference from outside of maybe the trade, like the biggest difference from last year's team to this year's team so far?
Well, the Panthers the Panthers average around 4.15 goals a game last year, and of course the goal production isn't there like it was, but they're still around the tops really in the NHL still. It's you can't. The truth is you can't outscore all your problems for the Panthers.
Ain't that true?
Yeah.
So, but now we go to the other side of the puck, where Aaron Ekblad, even though he missed a little bit of time, he's kind of regressed a little bit as far as this season. I've constantly seen him get beat. I believe that maybe he's still dealing with the groin injury that he had in the beginning of the season, so he's regressed a little bit. I mean, they with the limited cap space they had, of course, signing Mark Stahl. Of course, you guys dealt with Mark Stahl for a little bit there in Detroit. great on the penalty kill, valuable minutes on the penalty kill.
Still love him. I don't care if he's washed up. I still love him.
Yeah. And him and Eric Stahl as well. I mean, there's a reason why Eric Stahl wasn't in the league last year, but he's also been valuable on the penalty kill as well. But you're asking older guys on minimal deals to try to tread water, but also there's also a factor that these guys in the locker room can teach these guys on how to win. I mean, the front office isn't thinking step back. That's just a narrative that we create, and of course we see the talent on the ice of what's put together. But you know, you have a few veterans there, of course, with a few injuries, and let's address the truth about who has really regressed. It's been Sergei Bobrovsky. He hasn't had the season that he has last year. And Spencer Knight has taken the majority of the starts, even though he got pulled in Winnipeg the other day after giving up 3 goals on 15 shots. But even in the one start that he had in an 8-game span, I mean, Sergei Bobrovsky was just not good. Gave up a pretty embarrassing goal on the 4th goal in Calgary in Matthew Tkachuk's return. So I think maybe we could see Sergei Bobrovsky on Thursday night, because now that Spencer started 6 of 7 of the last 7, and now he has more starts, we could see Paul Maurice trying to put Sergei Bobrovsky in one. It's like, okay, if he can have one good performance, then they could go back to the rotation that they originally wanted to in the beginning of the season. But it's kind of forced Paul Maurice's hand, because the Panthers are not in a position to tank. Their draft pick belongs to the Montreal Canadiens unprotected. So tanking is out of the question for this team. So they're in the business of what this team needs to do to win. So the goaltending, if they see that Spencer Knight, even on a cheaper deal, is performing better, his hand will be forced.
It's a good thing I'm not the host of Locked On Florida Panthers, because I would just be the biggest Bob Truther out there, and all your listeners would hate me.
I forgot that you love him.
Not his fault ever. I love him. Okay,
I forgot.
But yeah, no, it's totally fair.
Yeah, when it comes to the Florida Panthers, I mean, the only real question I had left would have to do with Paul Maurice. You won the President's Trophy last season with an interim head coach at the helm, and that. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name right now, but
Andrew Burnett,
and I believe he went and joined the New Jersey Devils coaching staff, who are off to an incredible start. And I don't know how much the Devils had a fantastic core, and it was just waiting for it to all come together, and those pieces came together. I couldn't have predicted them being as good as they are. You wonder how much credit Burnett gets going from the Panthers having a 100-plus point season, winning the President's Trophy, to now the Devils being incredible. But you let him walk. And there's some conversation that their struggles in the playoffs were because of him. And you bring in Paul Maurice, who's a very experienced head coach, but someone who hasn't seen playoff success in quite some time. How are things working out with Paul Maurice? Obviously, you're 5th in the division, but are you seeing things when you watch the team play that maybe you go, okay, I can see what the thought here is?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning of the season, the defense was the least of the Panthers' problems, and we spoke about really how on paper the defense was really the issue for this Panthers team. Of course, trading away Mackenzie Weegar has a lot to do with that, but also with Paul Maurice is just hearing him speak as well about of his approach. He's not the type of guy who just throws players on the bus, and I think really for a group of Florida Panthers who have a good mix of mid-20s and 3 or 4 guys who are in their 30s, I think that he just wants to. I don't think he wants to play babysitter for this Panthers team, and I think he's like, I'm going to implement the systems. You guys are the players, and you play. And one thing we notice is that even when one person is having a bad game, you'll never see Paul Maurice throw them under the bus. He's not
Tortorella.
Yeah, he's not your rah type of guy. That's what I've noticed with Paul Maurice, and he's very good at smooth talking the media. That's for sure. And even I've had to like take a step back from hearing him speak, because sometimes, but even with like the non-hockey stuff and him talking about like mental health, like especially on media day, was really great to hear about Paul Maurice. But also just I don't necessarily know. We don't necessarily know everything that happened of like why the relationship with the Jets went wrong towards the end. But maybe it's just a matter of something just got old after a while too. And he even said it, new voice. So, and that's the thing, new voice for this Panthers team, and they wanted the experience. That Bill Zito felt that this team was ready to take that next step, and they said this is an experienced guy, and I feel for Andrew Burnett. But 3 goals in four playoff games against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and with the 4th game, your first time that whole season that you were shut out. Every single game before that, regular season and playoffs, they were not shut out at all.
Yeah.
So tough ending. And that's what happens when you also go 1 for 31 on the power play in the postseason. So that's really what stung towards the end of that run for the Panthers.
Absolutely. And so when we come back, we'll get into the game that is happening tonight by the time all you guys are listening to this, between the Detroit Red Wings and the Florida Panthers. So stay tuned to this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers and Locked On Red Wings.
Welcome back to this crossover edition of Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Detroit Red Wings podcast. So Panthers, Red Wings, 7:30, ESPN Plus. Bob Ushichin will be on the call, and Brian Boucher.
Did you just say ESPN Plus?
Yes, it's an ESPN Plus.
Why when our two teams play, is it always on ESPN Plus?
It is literally every single time the Red Wings play the Panthers, it's an ESPN Plus game, and it's been like that for 2 years now.
Yeah, I guess they just want to.
Scotty, I gotta go. Have fun, buddy.
We're gonna get shelled. That's what's gonna happen. We're about to get absolutely shelled. Every time we were on ESPN Plus last year, we got obliterated, and half of them were against y'all. So there you go.
I'm not expecting that this time around, because this Detroit Red Wings team is just completely different from what it was last year. But as far as the game goes, with I think there's going to be a little bit of rejuvenation for the Panthers, getting their captain back, hopefully. Anton Lundell hopefully coming back as well. With Patrick Hornquist's LTIR space, they don't have to have only just 20 players on their roster now. So that's a good thing that now you can have a few scratches here and there for the Panthers, because being in that position, even though hopefully it's a 1 season thing for the Panthers, we're feeling the cap, the cap right now for the Panthers. But I think that with this matchup, I think that the Florida Panthers are gonna come out with a win. But I'm expecting Ville Husso to be between the pipes on the other side, especially with 3 shutouts and a 916 goals against average. But I think the Panthers are going to come out desperate after a long road trip. They won't be doing morning skate tomorrow after coming back from a West Coast trip. So they'll be hopefully fresh come Thursday night. How about you guys?
Well, I mean, Florida's still a tough team, despite obviously the start to the year and everything. That's still one of the better teams in this division. And I think that if you were to ever have a let-down game from the Detroit Red Wings side of things, it would be this game. Like, if I wish everyone could watch the game against the Lightning, because it was one of the most like high-paced, just honestly electric hockey games that we've seen all year, and that's awesome. And it was a win, and there's nothing bad about that. But the game after can sometimes be a little bit of a letdown game. If it's not, I would be thrilled. Even if it's a close, hard-fought, maybe we steal a point or something type of game, like I would be absolutely thrilled. But if there was ever a kind of easing off the gas, like a letdown type of game, it would certainly be after the last 2 games that the Wings have had. And yeah, I don't know. That ESPN Plus kind of juju is
The
still in my
curse.
head too.
It's
Yeah.
the Madden curse for the Red Wings.
Right.
Anytime they're on ESPN Plus. No, but I think that this is a winnable game for the Detroit Red Wings. We talked about going into Tampa and facing the Lightning, and how if the Red Wings just played them close, because the Red Wings have been historically this season very bad at even strength play, 5-on-5 play. In fact, they ranked 25th in the league at expected goals for percentage at 5-on-5. But that has been better as of late. And even in the first two periods against Tampa Bay, they played them close and played them tough. But everything we were afraid of with Tampa Bay came to fruition in period 3 when they got desperate. They put their foot on the gas,
Almost
and they outshot the Red Wings.
Shot period.
Outshot the Red Wings 29-7 in the third period. So, and the Florida Panthers are even better at even strength than the Tampa Bay Lightning are this year. They have an expected goals for percentage of like 63. They're third in the league. So, I mean, if the Red Wings want to win this game, they got to play them tough at 5-on-5, as tough as they did against the Vegas Golden Knights, against the Toronto Maple Leafs, against the Tampa Bay Lightning through the first two periods, because they're playing tougher teams now, and these teams aren't going to give them the chance. Now, where I think the Red Wings have the natural edge is on special teams. The Red Wings special teams is, I think, 15th on the penalty kill and 21st on the power play, which doesn't sound all that great, but the Florida Panthers special team so far isn't too hot either. And I think that's probably one of the big reasons why you guys are struggling, because third at even strength for quality shooting attempts is phenomenal. But if you can't score when you're up a man, and you can't stop the other team from scoring when you're down a man, you're going to be put in a tough situation. And the Red Wings have been very good so far this season, especially with Dominic Kubalik in that circle in the power play, at converting on the power play. So I think that this is a winnable game. And I think if they can play your Panthers tough at 5-on-5, I think they'll sneak away with the win.
Yeah, and the Panthers on Tuesday night against Winnipeg had a 25 shot second period, but facing Connor Hellebuck, one of the best goalies in the NHL, a little bit of a tough ask, especially for a team that was also shorthanded at the time roster wise for this team. So 5-on-5 is the key for of course the Red Wings, but also for the Panthers as they're one of the best teams at 5-on-5. But as far as goals above expected, the Panthers, every single category has had them like near the bottom as far as that. But of course, we expect these to eventually equal out, and who knows? Maybe the Panthers run comes hopefully soon, because they still haven't had a 3-game winning streak this season. So I'm a believer that it will eventually. The floodgates will open for this Panthers team, but this Detroit Red Wings team is not a team that nobody can in the NHL can just sleep on anymore. It's not a team that you could just step on.
Bless.
We finally made it. We're no longer slept on.
We're no longer everybody's
America.
punching bag. Let's go. We took the step forward that everyone thought Ottawa was going to do.
Yeah.
What are they doing? Let's have another Sens crossover after this. Let's talk turkey with them.
Yeah, I mean, and their GM did come out and say rebuild's over, and oof, and
that's why you don't say it. Chris Ilitch, of the owner of the Tigers and the Red Wings, said the same thing about the Tigers last year.
Stop.
You never say the rebuild's over.
Stop. I'm not blending work right now. All right, we're focusing on hockey.
You don't say the rebuild's over. It doesn't work. Oh man.
But guys, this was great. Doing another crossover with you guys. Of course, always entertaining. Between you two, of course, the bickering of course, the friendly bickering, of course, that you guys.
That's what we want them to think.
Ridiculous.
Scotty and I hate each other.
Yeah. FYI.
But tell everybody on my feed where they can find you and your work online.
I am at Bentley Scotty on Twitter. The Locked On Red Wings show is at LO_Red Wings. And I also host Locked On Tigers if you are a Detroit Tigers, Florida Panthers fan. And you can find that at Locked On Tigers on Twitter. And yeah, I think that's everything I do.
Scotty, don't sell yourself short. He's also a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. He's a writer.
In fact, that.
He is a writer. Yeah,
high school hockey season coming up, baby.
let's go. I am a podcast producer for The Daily J, a WWJ News Radio podcast. Check that out at odyssey.com or wherever you get your
Talking about
podcasts.
Wolverines.
We talked about Wolverines on Tuesday, and that episode popped off. I'll have you know.
I listened.
Thank you. I
Of
appreciate
course.
that.
It was good.
And you can find me on Twitter at Brian Fisher WWJ, and that's about it for me.
Yeah, and since on my feed it's a South Florida show. If you like Miguel Cabrera, make sure you go to Locked On Tigers as well, so that you could hear Scotty cover Miguel Cabrera's last season in Major League Baseball as he says farewell after getting 3,000 hits last season. Now it's the goodbye for Miguel Cabrera. But people on the Detroit Red Wings feed can find me on Twitter at Monoman12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. And of course, maybe help the subscribers on YouTube on my end. But gentlemen, it's been great, and thank you once again, and can't wait for the next one.
Absolutely. It was a blast, Armando. Thanks for having us.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.